I'll bring people together and work with both parties without sacrificing my progressive values.
Kyrsten Sinema has broken half of the campaign promise she made in that ad during her 2012 run for Congress. Because while the Arizona Democrat is committed to working with both parties, obsessed even, the one-time progressive has definitely sacrificed her lefty values in order to do it. The stance that she and fellow centrist Joe Manchin hold against reforming the Senate filibuster, the ridiculous 60-vote threshold rule, poses the biggest obstacle to Joe Biden's agenda, to her party's agenda, to finding out what happened on January the 6th. Sinema didn't even show up for a crucial vote on a bipartisan commission and took 5 days to offer an explanation for her absence. Yesterday at a speech in Tulsa, the normally even-keeled president seemed to have had enough.
I hear all the folks on TV saying, why doesn't Biden get this done? Well, because Biden only has a majority of effectively 4 votes in the House and a tie in the Senate, with 2 members of the Senate who vote more with my Republican friends.
Sick burn, Joe. Also, Joe Biden talking about Joe Biden in the third person might be the most enjoyable Joe Biden. And he talked about Senators Manchin and Sinema, dinged them there without naming them, but the president still made it clear why the stakes are so high.
But we're not giving up. Earlier this year, the House of Representatives passed For the People Act to protect our democracy. The Senate will take it up later this month, and I'm going to fight like heck with every tool at my disposal for its passage. The House is also working on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is critical to providing new legal tools to combat the new assault on the right to vote.
Staff for both Senators Manchin and Sinema didn't comment today when asked about the president's unnamed references to their bosses, and neither senator has released a statement or tweet in response. But if Biden was already frustrated with Sinema, finally, imagine how he must have felt once he learned what she was doing at the time he was saying that.
Sinema was in Tucson Tuesday alongside her Republican colleague John Cornyn of Texas. The pair were pushing a bipartisan border bill just introduced.
I can't even pretend to feign surprise at that. At the revelation that Kyrsten Sinema was working with Texas Republican John Cornyn yesterday on a border bill that, while its provisions may do some good, is premised on the false narrative that there's been an unprecedented surge of migrants since Biden took office. There hasn't. Instead of being part of a predictable pattern that also saw migrants steadily arrive at the southern border in growing numbers during the final months of the Trump administration. Sinema and Cornyn's visit to the border was timed right after the Republican Party in Cornyn's home state of Texas was thwarted, possibly only temporarily, in its effort to restrict voting rights, to undermine democracy. But sure, let's believe, like Kyrsten Sinema believes, that Senator John Cornyn is an ally to be trusted, and that any problem you may have with keeping the filibuster fully intact is yours alone.
I've long been a supporter of the filibuster because it is a tool that protects the democracy of our nation rather than allowing our country to ricochet wildly every 2 to 4 years back and forth between policies. The reality is that when you have a system that's not working effectively, and I would think that most would agree that the Senate's not a particularly well-oiled machine, right? The way to fix that is to change your behavior.
No. The reality is that the filibuster is not protecting democracy right now. It is, in fact, doing the exact opposite of that. The future of the Republic is hanging by a thread while Republicans block the For the People Voting Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Expecting Republicans in Congress to change their behavior without a change in the rules is as crazy as expecting a recalcitrant toddler to change their behavior without imposing any new rules or consequences for bad behavior. Kyrsten Sinema rarely, if ever, stops to answer questions from reporters staked out in the hallways of the Capitol, like her fellow friend of the filibuster, Joe Manchin, at least does. She doesn't do Sunday show interviews. She doesn't write op-eds. She just isn't accountable. Except when she's speaking to business leaders in her home state. She loves being accountable to them.
The way I make decisions on behalf of Arizona and for our constituents is by listening to the business leaders who will be impacted by these decisions.
And what about the workers? Who's listening to them? Kyrsten Sinema can enigmatically sip on all of the brunch cocktails she wants to while wearing jewelry with expletives on it, like she did in April after voting to block a federal minimum wage increase. But her shtick, and I'm sorry, her arrogance, are wearing thin. Check, please. For more, let's bring in Tomas Robles, Executive Director of the grassroots group Living United for Change in Arizona. Tomas, thanks so much for coming on the show tonight. Is this the Kyrsten Sinema that your group thought you were working so hard to help elect to the Senate in 2018, that you knocked on doors for?
First of all, thank you very much for having me on the show, Mehdi. You know, unfortunately, it's worse. She's a worse version of what we feared we were doing when we were putting her in that chamber and in that seat. What we've seen from Senator Sinema is a complete lack of courage, a complete lack of integrity, and a complete lack of honesty. Just recently, she took credit for a minimum wage increase that Lucha itself passed in 2016 by saying that she strongly supported when, in fact, she did not endorse it. And when we've had conversations with her, it's this, and we actually haven't had conversations with her. When we've had conversations with her staff, it's been this consistent avoiding difficult conversations and avoiding actual difficult positions. This is not the act of a maverick who she claims to want to mimic in the late Senator John McCain. This is the act of someone who uses an excuse to do nothing. And for us, it's beyond frustrating. We've seen even voters that are deemed independent voters getting tired of her act because she's utilizing the filibuster as an excuse to hide versus seeing that the filibuster created in the Jim Crow era, not by our founding fathers, is actually detrimental to what we're trying to get done. And she claims to support all these issues, but in reality, she seems to be more of a Republican than a Democrat right now.
It's also the case of, what does she want to get done? Why be a United States senator if you don't actually want to pass legislation? And you simply cannot with that filibuster in place. Here's a question for you, Tomas. Did she start out this way? Is this how she's always been? Has she been on a journey? Has she responded to changing circumstances? What's your view of who the real Kyrsten Sinema is?
Kyrsten Sinema, to me, has always been an opportunist. Before a Republican, before a Democrat, before an elected official. In 2010, when Senate Bill 1070 was passed, an anti-immigrant law, Senator Sinema came out to a lot of us who were protesting at the Arizona State Legislature, and she brought pizzas and she acted friendly. While at the same time, she passed an anti-human trafficking bill that could be utilized to criminate people that were crossing the border, even if they were by themselves, because the law could state that you could essentially smuggle yourself and human traffic yourself. So it ended up being detrimental to immigrants from a criminal justice perspective. When we saw in the House of Representatives when she was in, she took incredibly difficult and hurtful votes that essentially criminalized further immigrants. We saw her take a vote for Kate's Law. We've seen her potentially vote for pro-business initiatives at the House of Representatives, and that has not changed. I think the most frustrating thing is our members, our organization, and the coalitions that we work in knocked over 1 million doors in 2018 to get her elected. We've had labor here contribute millions of dollars to her campaign, and yet she's done nothing but serve the will of business interests and serve the will of Republicans. She even voted with President Trump a majority of the time. And so right now what we're seeing is we're seeing a senator who is hiding behind the cloak of filibuster, when in reality, she's even been burned by it herself. We saw in these January 6th commission that was thwarted because of a filibuster, and she didn't even have the courage to show up. And for us, our members are going to continue to knock on hundreds and thousands of doors. We're going to knock on over 500,000 doors in 2024 at minimum, and we're going to have a difficult time supporting her.
She certainly did vote with Donald Trump on some of his appointees and some of his bills. I'm not sure she voted with him a majority of the time. But let me ask you this. Which issues do you feel, Tomas, you and your fellow activists feel particularly let down about? Is it the democracy, the voting rights issue? What has she done that's most disappointed you in the last year or two?
Well, I mean, how much time do I have? No, it's been an incredible, hurtful process. Right now, our immigration bills have been put in limbo because she refuses to act. We've had a farm workers bill that has no chance of passing, the DREAM Act bill that has no chance of passing without eliminating the filibuster, and also a essential workers package that would affect immigrants that serve in over 80% of these essential worker roles. We've seen the PRO Act, a pro-union, pro-labor bill that is in limbo because she refuses to act. We've seen S1, a bill that she claims to want to get passed and want to co-sponsor,
Yes.
that has no shot of passing because she continues to think that Republicans are going to go to her side. And all she has to do is look in-house, to look here in the state legislature and notice that Republicans here, despite having the same level of majority that Democrats have in the U.S. Senate, are passing the most anti-democracy, anti-First
Yes.
Amendment right. The governor is trying to push
Thomas.
a flat tax, and we're seeing Senator Sinema not learning from her own mistakes.
Thomas, isn't the problem, though, that if there was a Democratic Senate primary tomorrow, she'd probably be in trouble in Arizona, but there isn't one tomorrow. She knows she has till 2024. She's 3 years away from any kind of challenge. There isn't much accountability for a senator in a 6-year term.
The reason why we feel like by 2024 we can attention to this is because we, along with many organizations here in the last 10 years, have organized year-round. And so many times that's not seen from a public perspective. But when you're having hundreds of thousands of conversations every year, and you're having more voters be engaged in the day-to-day process of our political system, they're going to see the lack of action. And what we know to be true is that the more voters pay attention, the more accountable they want to hold those elected officials. And so we will continue to raise the alarm on Senator Sinema because she still has 3 years to prove it. And so far, she does not seem up to the task. And she's more interested in winning the hearts and minds of Republicans that care nothing about
Yes.
her versus the constituents that got her elected.